class, so this is our notes, Unit 11, Part 2, Day 2, Applications of Systems of Equations, so word problems. The first example in your notes is something that we talked about yesterday. I just wanted to kind of recap what we talked about at the end of the period, and it's a problem that says write the equation of a parabola that goes through the following points, and it gives you 3 points. So just as a reminder, we're going to use this formula to write our 3 equations. So this is the formula in standard form of a parabola. And what we're going to do is take each of these ordered pairs they gave us, and we're going to plug in for x and for y into this standard form parabola formula. So for example, in the first equation, we are going to plug in -12 for y, and then we're going to plug in 2 for x in both x spots. So I already wrote out the work just to save time in this video, but this is what it looks like for each of these. So for the red one, it was that first point. For the orange one, it's the second point, plugged in 8 for y and -2 for x. And then finally, the third one, I'm plugging -3 in, -3 in for x, and then 23 in for y. So here's what I end up getting. We do want to simplify each of these. So for example, in the first one, 2 squared is 4. So this is 4a. And then plus 2b, and then plus c, and that equals -12. Then in the orange one, -2 squared is still positive 4a, but this time it's -2b plus c equals 8. And then finally in the green, -3 squared is positive 9 with an a minus 3b plus c equals 23. All right, so these are my 3 equations, and I'm going to use these 3 equations to solve for the letters A, B, and C. So I'm going to make an augmented matrix when I plug into PolySimul 2. So I'm going to go on my calculator, I'm going to hit apps, I'm going to get into PolySimul 2, the simultaneous equation solver. This is 3 equations with 3 variables, and the coefficients are 4, 2, 1, and then equals -12 for the first equation. The second one is 4, -2, 1, and then 8. And the third one is 9, -3, 1, and then 23. So I'm going to type that into my PolySimul 2. I'm going to go ahead and hit solve. And what I get is 2, -5, -10. Now, this is not the answer to the problem. It wants us to write the equation. So what this actually means is that my A value is going to be 2, my B value is going to be -5, and my C value is -10. So I'm going to actually write out the equation in this little formula. So the answer is y equals, instead of A, it's 2, so 2x squared minus 5x, because that's my B is -5, minus 10, because the C was -10. So this is the answer to the actual question. So if I type this parabola into Desmos for examples, I would find that these 3 points are actually on that parabola. So that was example 1. Moving on to example 2, we have a scenario. So we have to make an equation or a system of equations given this information. So it says Jonathan Robbins is in charge of ordering the centerpieces for an awards banquet. There are 3 types of centerpieces. They cost $24, $33, and $46. He needs to order some of each for a total of 36 centerpieces. The total cost was $1,311, and he needs 5 fewer $24 centerpieces than $33 centerpieces. So find out how many $46 centerpieces he needs to order. That's a ton of information, so let's break it down. I already wrote this out. One thing I like to look for is, like, in a scenario like this, there's actually 3 unknowns. So there's going to be $24 pieces, which will make our X. There's going to be $33, and then that's our Y, with the $46 centerpieces as our Z. So the total amount of centerpieces they need is like 36. So the total amount, you're usually going to take the 3 things and just add them together. X plus Y plus Z equals a total of 36 total centerpieces in all. You're also going to take a look for like a money type of equation. So in this one, it gives me the price of each type of centerpiece, and it also gives me how much they spent. So what we're going to do is make an equation with that. So it's $24 for the X centerpieces. It is $33 for the Y centerpieces. And it's $46 for the Z centerpieces. And they spent a total of $1,311. So that is my second equation. The hardest equation is going to be that other, because we do need one other equation. So they're going to give me one other piece of information. This is it. He needs 5 fewer $24 centerpieces than $33 centerpieces. So what we're going to do is there's more. This one always confuses me. So I always like write down which one has more. There's more of the $33 centerpieces than there are the $24 centerpieces. So the $24 centerpieces are X. So there's a couple different ways we could think of it. We want to take the $33 centerpieces and subtract 5 of them. That'll give me how many $24 centerpieces there are. So 33 is Y, and then we're going to subtract 5. Okay, so the number of $33 centerpieces minus 5 gives me the $24 centerpieces. So that's this equation. But I do want it so that X and Y are on the same side, because when I put it into my matrix, I just need it to be in the right order. So I'm actually going to move that Y over. So it's X minus Y equals negative 5. All I did was just take this Y and move it over to the other side. But that's all, guys. Now we have 3 equations. We have 3 unknowns, so I can just go into PolySimult and I can solve by typing in all the coefficients here. So it's going to look like this: 1, 1, 1, and 36. Then it's going to be 24, 33, 46, and 1,311. And then 1 for the X, negative 1 for the Y. There was no Z in the third equation, so that's a 0, equals negative 5. So let's go into PolySimul and let's find our solution. So the solution to the system, after you type it into PolySimul 2, was 8, 13, and 15. So we want to be specific. It's asking for how many $46 centerpieces, which we said was the letter Z. So my answer is 15 of the $46 centerpieces. So if it asked for like any of the other ones, it's just going to go in order. So the X answer was the $24 centerpieces. There was 8 of those. There was 13 of the $33 ones, and then there was 15 of the $46 ones. So that's the answer. All right, I'm actually going to skip example 3 in our notes. It's just a little bit of an easier problem, and it's something that I feel like I can explain really quick when I see you next. So we're just going to go to the last one, which is kind of similar to the one we just did. It reads, a small corporation borrowed $800,000 and to expand its line of toys. Some of the money was borrowed at 8%, some at 9%, and 10% interest. It should say interest. That's what that's talking about. So it says how much money was borrowed at each rate if the annual interest owed was $67,000 and the amount borrowed at 8% was 5 times the amount borrowed at 10%. All right, so we have a lot of information. Always look for that total amount. So like the money borrowed in all was $800,000. And so X, the money at that percent, plus Y, plus Z, all has to add up to this 800,000 figure. For these, if it's ever talking about interest, it's going to give you percentages, and then it's going to give you what the interest, like total amount is owed. So the percentages goes with the interest owed. So 8%, which I'm going to convert to a decimal, so 0.08 goes with X. We'll say 9% goes with Y. So that's 0.09, and 10% would be 0.10 with the Z. And that is going to equal the interest owed, which is $67,000. And that other equation is always the hardest. It says the amount borrowed at 8% was 5 times the amount borrowed at 10. So there's more of the 8%, which means I need to take the 10% amount and multiply it by 5 to get the 8% amount. So the 8% amount is X. So that's X equals, I'm going to take the 10% amount, that's Z, times 5. And then I do want to rewrite it so that the x and the z are on the same side. And when I move that 5z over, there's nothing else left. So that's going to be 0. So there's the three equations. And now I'm going to go to polysimul. Let's write out the matrix. It's going to be 1, 1, 1, 800,000. Then it's going to be 0.08, 0.09, 0.10, 67,000. Okay, then 1 for x, nothing for y, -5 for z, and 0, and equals 0 for the other side. So there's your augmented matrix. Go ahead to polysimul 2 right now and type this in. So I put in my matrix to polysimul, and I got these answers: 625,000, 50,000, 125,000. So we just have to make sure we understand which is each. It does say how much was borrowed at each rate. So the 625,000 is X. So that one was at the 8% rate. The 50,000 was at the 9% rate. And finally, the 125,000 was at the 10% rate. And that is our answer. So that's just like a little, I mean, that's really it. I skipped one of the examples. I want you to try the homework tonight. And hopefully these notes help a little bit figuring out how to do these problems. But we can always regroup and talk about it more tomorrow. Thanks, guys.